I want to make a few points, then go into my attack. But first, let me thank my Patreons. Slick Pockets. So we discussed a variety of relativism called True for Me relativism, and I'll list 4 reasons why one takes this position or uses this strategy, and the names don't really matter, these are just what I call them for the sake of presentation here. 1 dishonest reason, 1 sympathetic reason, 1 psychological reason, not that the others aren't psychological or sympathetic, and 1 socially honorable reason. First, the dishonest reason. First, dishonest motives are that since TFM implies no one can be wrong, they take this position to defend themselves. I find more often than people realize, people actually do assert things as if they're speaking about the truth only until people disagree with them or demonstrate that the evidence for the truth is starting to mount against them. And then once they realize this, they in a way revert to TFM, stepping back from the claims to the truth, or hiding from the criticism with TFM. Some real-world examples of this are KAC might talk about the importance of undisputed facts that support her leader on national television, until the leader is criticized using the seeming undisputed facts, and in response she will revert and hide and begin talking about how there are alternative facts. RJ might speak about getting to the truth of the matter, until pressured about how the evidence suggests the truth is not in their favor. And then RJ might say something like, the truth is not the truth. An extended example though is that PH might claim to have been harassed by JK at an event during time X where MP was also there. But video evidence shows the event at time X where MP was also there, and the video clearly shows that JK was not even there. Multiple people and tangible evidence corroborate that it was not JK at the event, but some point out that KB does kinda look similar to JK. In response to all the evidence suggesting that this is a case of misidentification, which scientifically and historically has been shown to happen well more often than people anticipate, the phenomenon of false memories, look it up. Rather than question the possibility of their own misjudgment and misidentification, PH instead responds to the evidence by saying, I know my truth. These are real cases, political and social. If you want to guess about who it's about, I mean, that's up to you. In the bottom, maybe I'll like your comment if you guess it right, but I just don't want to hurt anyone. But I'm sure you've seen this yourself in your own life about how this can happen. Someone states something as if they're stating the truth, only to have other points out the conflict with scientific evidence or opposing views, and instead they end up saying, well, it's true for me. For them, TFM is used to defend themselves from being corrected or admitting that they may have made a mistake in what they believed initially to be the truth. That's kind of dishonest. And then there's a sympathetic reason. They just want to be heard and feel validated in coming to their belief, even if it turns out that they were wrong. For those of you who haven't watched my JTB video, you'll check it out. It's only like 15 minutes. In that picture though, knowledge is justified beliefs that are true, and definitely some other things too, but at least these 3 components. So say you had a belief stance, and you had good reasons for it, that you were justified. It just happens to turn out that you were wrong, but because of that, we deny that it really was knowledge, since we believe you can't say you knew something if it turns out it was false. Now, a battle in epistemology might be whether or not you can really have justification if it's possible you can be wrong, but here it just turns out that you were wrong, but you don't want to be treated or spoken to as if you just made stuff up, and as if equal to someone who did just make stuff up on beliefs without any justification. So in order to express that you want to be honored and respected that you were justified in what you believed, even though it turned out to be wrong, you say, well, I don't know about the truth, but it's true for me. And especially if the truth is being used to harshly denigrate you because you have been making false claims regardless of the fact that you had justification, then you might also want to deny that there even is such a thing as the truth. I get it. Well, then it's not much more of a communicative tool to identify yourself as having justification. But, okay, you have had some justification. Maybe it's possible philosophically to be fully justified and not have truth. So maybe it's not your fault at all that you were wrong. But that's still not knowledge claimed to the truth, since it doesn't even involve truth. And it isn't a good philosophical reason to suggest that truth should be just justified belief then, just the JB, no big T, that it's just a little t and little t is equal to just justified belief alone. It just seems that what you want is validation, you want to be heard, and you just don't want to be attacked. So I have some sympathy for this case, because yes, I too believe there is a difference between justified belief and unjustified belief, which is noteworthy, and somebody should get credit for that, or at least not be attacked as if they just made up something without any justification. But the fact that we need to maybe find a better way to communicate that, hey, I was still justified given what I experienced, is not really a serious reason for then denying reality or criticizing the concept of the truth in a philosophic sense. But anyway, I have an understanding for that need for sympathy in such a situation. The third point, though, is more an emotional, psychological thing that we have already discussed. They might employ the strategy simply to bring the conflict to an end. Again, the conception of truth for me is then more used as a kind of way to circumvent the anxiety that might come about from a psychological association that we've built up when we're confronted by situations where there are differing claims to the truth. Like the need for sympathy reason, it too isn't a real reflection about the nature of reality and truth here. But since we are aiming at the organs to make the best case, I said this: you must basically be generous. And I spoke about how attractive TFM relativism is, and it is indeed attractive for socially honorable reasons. It sounds inclusive, it sounds positive, it sounds like there's equality for everyone, it sounds humble. In effect, it sounds like a philosophy of tolerance. So that's the organ. And not just the organ for TFM, but even for more sophisticated versions of relativism, leading to cultural relativism. Check out my footnotes. And because of those honest motives, what happens is that many people, without getting first sufficient philosophic understanding or reflection, pick up this weapon, relativism, and wield it to an extreme degree that they don't much understand or care for its philosophic implications. But the weapon of relativism does exist and is powerful in philosophy for a number of good reasons. Powers from historical and anthropological analysis, as well as from philosophy and philosophers, seemingly drawing the power from, big name philosophers like Quine and Wittgenstein, and those who have been influenced by them, such as Winch and Rorty, as dealt with in detail by Patrick Phillips. And also in the philosophy of science, as I have been detailing with Kuhn, as well as many others. But hey, check out that video about the Science Wars video that talks about how Kuhn kind of leads us here into the discussion about relativism, about truth, and even about science. The link is in the description below, or on top, or wherever. Please find it. But anyway, those are more sophisticated versions of relativists, which are dealt with by O'Grady, Phillips, and parts of Kirk's book, and they do an excellent job. However, we are dealing with this kind of relativist, called the TFM relativist, and Kirk shows how it leads to solipsism. That's why it caught my eye. And solipsism is a bad position philosophically. I'll explain why, even though Kirk didn't really do it. But of course, he points out that even if it leads here, that bad position, even that position still didn't support the extreme TFM relativist philosophy. That was a cool move, but for my movement, I'll show again how TFM leads to solipsism in my way, why solipsism is philosophically bad, and since many of them don't seem to care about the philosophical implications as noted by Phillips, I will, more importantly than what Kirk did, showing that it still doesn't even support TFM, I'll simply show that that position then attacks their own organs. I'll show that a commitment to TFM relativism will lead them to becoming what they hate. Step 1. That TFM leads to solipsism. To say that all truth depends on you and you are not committed to statements being capable of in any way conveying anything beyond personal perception, this includes that not mind-dependent reality exists, and it also includes a statement, others exist independent of me. Remember, for the relativist, X is just X to me, and I have no access to X as it is outside in the world, or as perceived by others, because I can only have X to me. That X, whatever it is, it could be anything, even other people, a person, it could be you. So just like my commitment, or rather not commitment, to X beyond my perception, I have no honest commitment to others outside of me, and my perception, my reality, my truth. I cannot commit to the access to others that are not others to me, and deny that there's something other than others to me that has any influence on me. That is, I cannot be wrong about others, and I cannot even commit to their existence beyond the times they appear to me, when they seem to me only others for me. But to be more fair to the relativist, yes, because truth seems to be tied not merely into what is, but what is said about what is, saying what is, sentences, a language, are all dependent on the speaker, on a mind. But relativists aren't merely pointing out that we shouldn't ignore that truths as a part of a value of sentences must therefore always depend also on the mind. They are going further than that and making the claim exclusive, meaning they are also denying that it has any meaningful connection to a mind-independent reality. They are denying any connection to the world, or at most its connection is trivial, and sometimes they even go so far as to deny the world even exists independently. And they backpedal on this when you point it out. So for them, it's not even that, reality is being conveyed through the mind-dependent medium, such as a language, a paradigm, a framework, or something that we call truth. It's just that that's just what it is. It's just how it seems to you as, or as acceptable it is to your community as, or to your time as true as. As I explained, this is including the existence of others. For them, there is no influence of reality beyond them about your existence. So it leads to solipsism. But now I'll explain why solipsism is bad, or a dead end anyway. So a conversation is never fair. They do not, as according to their position, respect your agency as a true other. Others require that they are not just in your mind, lest they wouldn't really be other. Other, the concept of other, necessitates that it isn't dependent on you, wholly you, that it is not you. It must be truly other. The truth of others then doesn't really exist for the TFM relativist. They do not show respect for the existence of others as true agents, as not dependent on them. Agents capable of reflecting on a reality not dependent on either of them. Solipsists do not believe, in accordance with their own position, that any real conversation is happening other than one they may be having with themselves for fun, I guess. Like talking to a phantom of their own creation, I suppose. They have no honest purpose to speak or communicate to another when others for them do not really exist, independent of their own perspective. And this is why true solipsism is a dead end. Even if logically and psychologically possible, conversations end. They have no one to speak to. If they are honestly a solipsist, battle ends. Engagement ends. No possibility of agreeing or disagreeing, manipulating or convincing others, because there are no others. Thus, to speak as if having a legit conversation at all, having a battle at all, having purpose to communicate at all, you cannot at the same time be denying speaking does happen, that battle does happen. This indeed does tie us into kind of Descartes' philosophy, and many others kind of point this type of thing out, as it leads to massive points that are hugely philosophically crippling to any extreme relativist, sophisticated or not. I mean, we will really get into this in the following episodes since it's much more into those philosophic issues, but I'm sure many of you have already noticed how weird and self-defeating it is, or incoherent, that they would disagree with us to say that disagreement is impossible. That they would disagree with us who say that disagreement is possible. I mean, with some philosophic self-reflection, perhaps they could notice that they are behaving in a way that contradicts or directly disproves what they are asserting. And they're doing so at the exact time that they are asserting it. They defeat themselves on the spot by proving what they say cannot be. That's why it's so confining and so constraining. And we'll really get into that in the next episode. But one can't really argue much when one wants to argue that argument can't happen. It's such a self-defeating position that in order to be coherent, you can't really argue at all. I just hope for now that you understand they're in a position where conversation ends. This is horrifying because the voodoo has set in, becoming what they hate. Think about it. They wanted this, which are honorable, understandable, good motives. But they have been led down a path wielding philosophic weapons and ended up in a position taken back sounds more like this, the opposite of their initial motives. They are in a position of exclusiveness. Only the solipsist exists. It's all about them. It's negative. Others don't exist independently of them. They don't have to care about what anyone else's beliefs are. No one else can correct them because there is no one else. Thus, they certainly don't respect the agency of others as equal, and thus they don't actually tolerate the legitimacy of other agents. They are in a position of massive ego. They are the center of the universe, reality, all of truth, all that is, since all is only true for them. And of course, they can never be wrong. They must always be right, and there is no truth that they don't know. In effect, they know all the facts, and continue with the denial of the existence of agency of others independent of their minds. This doesn't sound good. This doesn't sound like it honors those organs. The denial of others is not positive. They have become what they hated. Now we have to say to them, hey, respect my agency. Commit to, or at least act and behave and speak as if you're committed to, a metaphysical reality beyond your particular perception. If you want to have a real conversation with me, let go of your intolerance. People, entities beyond you and yours, have equal legitimate existence beyond what it might seem to you as. Just because you don't know about us or refuse to know doesn't mean we don't exist, or that we would somehow cease to exist if you have forgotten about us. Now one might wonder, what about things such as trans truth, or women's truth, or indigenous truths? Now it's true these terms do exist, and they may be valuable in our use of them, but let's not confuse these terms with implying that there is something other than the truth. As I've already pointed out earlier, these terms at best point to unique methods of getting justification for claims to truth, possibly. Different kinds of J's. But that doesn't imply anything about there not being the truth. Or it may just refer to how these groups may have unique access to specific aspects of the truth. But that too doesn't imply that it isn't the truth that these groups have access to. Listen, transgender people exist for the same world of the government despite what it seems to the government like. Women's issues exist in the same world of men despite what men know. Admit there may be undiscovered indigenous people out there even if we haven't discovered them, and their existence doesn't depend wholly, completely, conclusively on what seems to us. Seems to us can be our perspective or our opinions. Good opinions may be justified opinions, but it is not truth, which should tie into or be influenced by reality beyond just what you think. Please, believe me, I understand, as Paul O'Grady says, that one of the motivations of the Lithic relativist is to attempt to accommodate diversity. And I understand the noble efforts that go into wanting a position that seems to align itself with that. But to achieve being open to understanding the world or others, we must accept that there are facts, or at least a reality beyond you, that you, anyone, and everyone can be wrong about that reality, that we can be wrong. But all this is an attack on their organs. They wanted to be good. They didn't want to become this self-centered, egotistical, intolerant person who can never be wrong and knows everything and others don't even exist unless they know about it. They weren't evil. They're not mean. They thought they were helping. They used a philosophic strategy, but without philosophic understanding of that strategy, that weapon, it takes them down an extreme path where they're led to bite many bullets. And now they say there are no truths, that disagreement and agreement isn't possible, and therefore conversation isn't even really possible. And then also that they are now solipsists, which should show that they really have no need to speak at all. For others, thinking that this is a solution to conflict, they have become Lithic segregationists. They want to separate you and I, because we can and do disagree. They want to tell us we don't share the same world, that we are not united. So fearful some of them have become that reds and blues will fight, that they will keep reds and blues separate. We would not enjoy the light of purple in that world. Sure, fighting can cause pain, abuse can happen, but the fear of pain should never be so greater than courage to see beyond and recognize the influence of a reality that transcends all the categories we have. whether socially, psychologically, or seemingly biologically naturally created categories that separate us. We should never ignore the importance of a shared reality across cultures, genders, religion, race, ethnicity, nationality, size, shape, color, currency, species, dimensions, realms, all distinctions within which all identities, distinctions are at all, with one truth, one reality, one existence, one something, whatever you want to call it, from which we must attempt to conceive of these distinctions in the first place. Sure, the Spanish may do violence to the Mayans, the whites may oppress the blacks, the straights could attack the queer, the man might silence the woman, they all may ignore the possibility of even more others, but never will the fear of someone telling others they are wrong, or even possible hatred among them, exceed my courage to seek the truth that we, all of us, everyone, everything, everywhere, are united in reality. And it is truth that ties into it, a shared plane of existence. But at this point, calling it anything, addressing it at all, could limit it in ways that allow us to multiply it, and doing either pushes us to a higher, unnamed plane, and an even more meta view of that which is. So I admit to the relativist that I have no objective language, no true universal perspective, and will never have that, but a commitment to it, a unified reality, and an honest attempt to speak from it to the best of my ability is necessary as a medium for true engagement with others. Through reality, I and others are. Through reality, I love, I hate, we are. And language at all is. Do not keep us separate because you are afraid we will fight. Let us love, let us fight, let us accept that which unites, even if it brings conflict. Only through a shared realm of color itself can red and blue make purple, or can we contemplate the existence of green. When you deny us this, you betray your organs, those honest motives you may have had. You became an Olithic segregationist, not a uniter. Do not fear being wrong. Do not fear disagreeing. Do not let your fears lead you to deny the existence or agency of others beyond you and yours.
So that was my move. Now hopefully many of you really enjoyed it and thought it was powerful. Hopefully it causes some of you who are more enthusiastically open to TFM relativism to be a bit more cautious. However, I know some philosophers may have actually been put off by some of the statements and my emphasis on my agency argument. So for the more philosophically concerned, or those who may think there are some counters or would like to know more about some of the points Kirk makes that I left out, there's going to be a sort of post-supplementary video that gives a recap of what happened from a fresh angle so I can explain why that is, as well as address some of the possible confusions and initial counterarguments. So if any of these points sound like interesting things to briefly discuss, please watch that video. I will address misleading phrasing in the TFM videos, a relativist realist picture that is a stance that is both relativist and realist at the same time, Kirk's use of the term fact versus my use of the term reality, the limitations on language as well as the limitations and dangers here by the relativists either being unable to state their own position or being forced into self-defeat, which I will call a fork. Though as I keep saying, I was saving that for the next episode with Paul O'Grady, so don't worry, we will still see that fork regardless. I will also address to a certain extent a language game counter and the use of correspondence theory here. And finally, how philosophers may see my agency argument as not all that impressive compared to the more philosophically gripping fork situation that I actually left out from Kirk's chapter. Don't worry though, even if you're fully satisfied with this video as it is and aren't keen on listening on more nuances involving Kirk and myself and what happened in this episode, I wouldn't call it completely mandatory in the sense that it won't pull away from the enjoyment you took from this episode and your ability to follow in the next episode. After all, as I said, many of the points I leave out I did on purpose because, as I stated from the beginning, I wanted to address them and I'll be making them much more clearer in the next full episode with O'Grady anyway, and that's why it's just going to be a sort of supplementary video. But certainly if you think you have some solutions or counter-arguments to anything that I've presented here, it would pay to watch that supplement video I'll make. What will I call it? Maybe the TFM Conclusion Supplement. I don't know. Narratively wise, like I said, we can move on to Paul O'Grady now. If you really don't want to take part in the TFM Conclusion Supplement, it's up to you. If you're more interested or just more critical, please check it out. If you don't find any issues here and just more interested in moving on, then let's do that. I guess it's like an optional quest in a game or a choose your own adventure in a novel. Except it's definitely my adventure. Anyway, I never wanted Kirk to become such a huge thing anyway, but I guess now I have learned from my own venture that this will happen anytime I make my own move now that I can with the second rank. For my first move, however, starting with one that is maybe even a little less philosophical and more sociological, it's got me a bit stressed out and worried, I guess. Anyway, if anything you've gotten from these videos of mine here, I hope it's that philosophy is fun, and battle does yield results. Maybe not the kind you expect. Maybe I can't really force someone to admit that I'm right and they're wrong on the spot. It may even be really naive of me to accept someone else or even myself to be so open and quickly self-reflective to do that. You should always allow someone to save face as much as possible and give them the opportunity to take time and reflect on what you say before expecting them to admit anything or make any changes. Be gracious, right? With some time, they might have a cool counter to show you, which can help improve your own position too. But by doing battle, we see how some strategies are better than others, how some positions have more difficulties, more self-damaging ones than others as well. And in that way, speaking about our ideas with others, testing out our weapons in battle, the philosophic community can come to a sort of general consensus about certain strategies. And about the TFM strategy, well, it's just not a good strategy. But before we move to those deeper issues I spoke about and versions of the Relativist that are taken as greater than TFM, I ask that if you've gotten here, then you probably do like what I'm doing here. So kindly click like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. That way you can see me explain the necessity of one better in the following episode. It's not any kind of mysticism or empty inspirational platitudes if that's what you're thinking. It's real stuff. I'm doing real philosophy here. Also, if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. I love y'all. But I'd like to ask you for some more help promoting my channel if that's okay. I really am not good at that, it seems. So please share any of my videos in a larger philosophy groups on Facebook or forums of some kind, since most of the time I'm not even really allowed to do that for myself. It's usually banned behavior. I have no real friends to do this type of thing either, but my Buddhist children who are great at social media, you know, constantly texting on the tweeters, well, they don't exist. I tell ya, Patreon is the best way to support me. With even $2, it lets me know you really enjoy my stuff, are willing to cover the cost of a coffee for me, and you totally support wanting to see my show be successful and help me survive on the internet, where education and philosophy might have a hard time. It's an uphill battle for us philosophers, inside and very much outside academia. But if not Patreon, then if you could, just a little continued exposure effort and promotion from my subscribers might go ways for me getting a neck, let's say. Mostly though, I think everyone watching this should send this video series, or the full episode I'll upload too, about TFM to anyone or at any time the issue of my truth or true for me has come up. Fair enough? Cool. Finally, some of you may have been wondering, why can't we have both TFM kind of truths and the truth at the same time? It was already explained in different places in this video, but I admit I didn't present a clear point about why not both in this video. But there is a reason, and I'll cover that in the next episode. I know I've talked a lot about what's gonna happen in the next episode, but that next episode with Paul O'Grady, it definitely will be the most hardcore philosophic I've gotten in this entire series. And after that, you will surely have attained for yourself the powers of this philosophic eye. This eye will help you combat warriors wielding this weapon to extreme degrees and without philosophic understanding. So if you want this power, join me in the next episode, because philosophers keep battling.